They say your 10th wedding anniversary is supposed to be about tin or aluminum strong, flexible metals that symbolize a decade of resilience. But my husband Ethan always preferred gold. He draped me in it, housed me in it, and used it to build a gilded cage he thought I'd never leave. Tonight was our anniversary dinner, hosted by his powerful family. I walked in 8 months pregnant with our son, my heart a leaden weight in my chest, because I already knew. And as my eyes fell upon her, the woman sitting next to my husband, I saw it. It wasn't just any ring on her finger. It was my wedding ring. But I wasn't there to cry. I was there to collect. And in my purse, nestled next to the sonogram of our child, was the one thing that could burn their whole world down our original state-certified marriage license. The restaurant was an exercise in opulent restraint, the kind of place where the waiter's shoes cost more than a mortgage payment, and the silence between courses was filled with the clinking of old money against new ambition. Le ciel étoilé. They called it the starry sky. From our private alcove on the 32nd floor, the city lights of Chicago sprawled below us like a carpet of scattered diamonds. But the real stars were supposed to be the ones seated at this table. The Sterling family. My husband, Ethan Sterling, sat at the head of the table, a position he assumed as naturally as breathing. He was handsome in that sharp architectural way, all clean lines and a confident structure that made people instinctively trust him. He was a master of facades, both in the buildings he designed and the life he constructed. To his right sat his mother, Isabella Sterling, the family's matriarch, a woman carved from ice and heirloom jewels. Her smile never quite reached her eyes, which were perpetually assessing, calculating. Opposite her, my father-in-law, Robert, a man who had long ago ceded his authority to his wife's formidable will, swirled the wine in his glass with a practiced air of indifference. And then there was Chloe Ethan's younger sister. She sat next to me, offering a small conspiratorial eye roll as her mother began a monologue about the charity gala she was chairing. Chloe was the only one in the family who seemed to possess a genuine, unfiltered emotion. She saw the cracks in the perfect Sterling veneer, and for that I had always been grateful. Tonight was our 10th wedding anniversary. A decade. A milestone that felt less like a celebration and more like a sentence. The heavy silverware felt cold in my hands, a stark contrast to the stifling warmth of the room. I was 8 months pregnant, a fact Isabella had lamented publicly as unfortunate timing for a party. The baby a boy. We had decided to name Oliver, pressed a foot up under my ribs, a tiny insistent reminder of the life I was carrying, the future I was fighting for. To 10 years, Ethan said, raising his glass. His voice, usually so smooth and resonant, had a slight edge to it tonight, a nervous energy that he tried to mask with a broad smile. His eyes met mine across the table, but the connection was hollow. It was a performance, and we were both just playing our parts. To my beautiful wife Amelia, the cornerstone of my life, may the next 10 years be even more prosperous and joyful than the last. The family murmured their assent, a chorus of polite applause. I forced a smile, the muscles in my face aching with the effort. Cornerstone. The irony was a bitter pill on my tongue. A cornerstone is the first stone set, the one that determines the position of the entire structure. But I knew I was no longer the foundation of his life. I was just part of the decoration. My gaze drifted from Ethan's face past his mother's disapproving frown to the other side of the table. To her. Her name was Serafina, a name as ethereal and delicate as she was. She was an artist, one of the up-and-coming talents Ethan's firm had recently begun to patronize. That was the official story, anyway. She was introduced tonight simply as a family friend, a guest of Chloe's, though Chloe looked just as surprised to see her as I felt. Serafina was beautiful, with wide, doe-like eyes and a cascade of dark hair that seemed to capture the dim light of the restaurant. She was also, I noted, with a clinical detachment at least 10 years younger than me. She had been quiet all evening, casting shy, adoring glances at Ethan whenever she thought no one was looking. But I was looking. I had been looking for months. I saw the way his hand brushed hers as he passed the bread basket. I saw the shared secret smile that flickered between them when Robert told a long, rambling story. They were speaking a language I wasn't meant to understand, but I was fluent in the dialect of betrayal. The main course arrived seared scallops with a saffron risotto. The rich aroma, which normally would have delighted me, turned my stomach. I pushed the delicate grains around my plate, my appetite gone, replaced by a cold, hard knot of certainty. "Amelia, darling, you're barely eating." Isabella noted her voice dripping with faux concern. "Is the baby making you ill?" "Just feeling a little tired, that's all," I murmured, placing a hand on my swollen belly. "Oliver's being quite active tonight." Ethan reached across the table, placing his hand over mine. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" His touch was like a spark on dry tinder. I wanted to recoil, to snatch my hand away, but I held still. I had to. The plan, my carefully constructed fortress of a plan, depended on my composure. So I smiled back at him, a brittle, fragile thing. "Perfectly fine." It was then that I saw it. As Ethan's hand retreated, my eyes followed it back across the table. Serafina, flustered by the brief moment of intimacy between husband and wife, raised her own hand to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. And on the third finger of her left hand, a faux ignited in the dim light. It wasn't just a ring. It was the ring. My ring. Not my engagement ring, a classic 2-carat solitaire that now felt tight on my swollen finger. No, this was my wedding band. It was a custom piece Ethan had designed himself, a delicate braid of white and rose gold meant to symbolize our 2 lives intertwining. Inside I knew the inscription by heart. My beginning and my end. ES to AR. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The low hum of conversation faded into a dull roar in my ears. The air grew thick, heavy, impossible to breathe. Every detail of the ring was seared into my memory, and the one on her finger was an exact match. The way the light caught the brushed finish of the rose gold, the precise twist of the metal at the top. I felt Chloe's hand on my arm. "Amelia, are you okay? You've gone completely white." I couldn't speak. I could only stare at that ring, a symbol of my marriage, my decade of love and loyalty, now resting on the hand of another woman who was sitting at my anniversary dinner. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. This wasn't just an affair. This was a replacement. He was trying to erase me. My mind reeled back to 3 days ago. I had been looking for the ring. I'd taken it off to apply lotion and had placed it in the small porcelain dish on my vanity. When I went to put it back on, it was gone. I had searched the entire house, my panic growing with every empty drawer and upturned cushion. Ethan had helped me look his face a mask of concern. "It'll turn up, sweetheart," he had soothed, wrapping his arms around me. "It's just a thing. We can always replace it. It's just a thing. Now, seeing it on her finger, the calculated cruelty of his words hit me with the force of a physical blow. He hadn't just allowed me to believe I'd lost it. He had taken it. He had stolen a piece of my life, a piece of our history, and had gifted it to his mistress. He had seated her at our table in front of his family on the very night meant to celebrate the vows he had so thoroughly desecrated. A hot, white rage began to burn through the shock, melting the ice in my veins. It was a fury so pure and so potent that it cleared my head, sharpening my focus. The nausea subsided, replaced by a wave of adrenaline. They thought I was a fool. They thought I was a weak, pregnant wife who could be placated and eventually discarded. They thought I would sit here and quietly accept my own erasure. They were wrong. I met Ethan's gaze again. He was watching me, a flicker of something fear triumph in his eyes. He saw that I had seen the ring. He was waiting for my reaction, waiting for the tears, the accusations, the messy, hysterical scene that would prove to everyone that I was the unstable one. I gave him none of it. Instead, I took a slow, deliberate sip of water. I calmly placed my napkin on the table. My hand went to the expensive leather handbag resting on the seat beside me. Inside passed my wallet and the baby's sonogram. Pictures of my fingers found the crisp, folded edge of the document I had retrieved from our safe deposit box that morning. The real one, the original, the one with the raised state seal and the signatures that bound us together in the eyes of the law. Not just a symbol like the ring, but the undeniable, legally binding proof of our union. I pulled it out. The temperature in the alcove seemed to drop 20 degrees. Every eye was now on me. The hushed conversation had died completely. I looked at Ethan, at his beautiful lying face, and I gave him a small, cold smile. The performance was over. It was time for the show to begin. The document in my hand felt as heavy as a gravestone. It was a single sheet of cream-colored heavyweight paper, but it contained the weight of 10 years of my life. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Certificate of Marriage. My maiden name, Amelia Rosewood, and his Ethan Sterling were written in elegant official script. I placed it on the table with a soft, definitive thud that cut through the silence. The sound was small, yet it echoed in the alcove like a gunshot. Ethan's smile faltered, the carefully constructed charm cracking like thin ice. "Amelia, what's this? What are you doing?" His voice was a low hiss meant for my ears only, but in the tomb-like quiet, everyone heard it. "I believe you know what this is, Ethan," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I looked past him directly at Serafina. Her doe eyes were white with confusion, her hand frozen midway to her wine glass. "It's our marriage license, the real one." I let the words hang in the air. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The quiet certainty of my tone was more damning than any scream. Isabella Sterling recovered first. She let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound like shattering glass. "Amelia, for heaven's sake, what is the meaning of this melodrama? You're making a scene. Put that away." "I don't think I will," I replied, my gaze unwavering from Serafina's. I gestured with my chin towards her left hand. "You're wearing a very beautiful ring. It looks familiar. In fact," I tilted my head, feigning a moment of contemplation, "it looks exactly like my wedding ring, the one that mysteriously vanished from my jewelry dish 3 days ago." Serafina snatched her hand back as if burned, tucking it into her lap. A deep crimson blush crept up her neck, staining her porcelain skin. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, looking at Ethan with panicked eyes. "Ethan gave this to me," He said it was a symbol of his promise. A promise? I echoed the word, dripping with scorn. What exactly did he promise you, Serafina? That he was a single man, that his very pregnant wife of 10 years was just an inconvenient roommate. Amelia, that's enough, Ethan boomed, slamming his hand on the table. The water glasses jumped and a few drops of red wine sloshed onto the pristine white tablecloth, spreading like a bloodstain. You're hysterical. The pregnancy is clearly making you irrational. Apologize to our guest immediately. Our guest. The casual dismissal sent another surge of cold fire through me. Hysterical! I laughed a real humorless sound this time. Irrational, no, Ethan. I've never been more rational in my life. For 10 years I've lived in the House of Sterling, playing the part of the devoted, supportive wife. I hosted your dinner parties. I smoothed over your rough edges. I stood by you while you built your empire. And I did it gladly, because I was your wife. Because I loved you. My voice cracked on the last 3 words, the only betrayal of the deep well of pain beneath the anger. I took a breath, steadying myself. I would not cry. Not here. But a funny thing happened. I started to notice things. The late nights at the office. The hushed phone calls you'd take in the other room. The credit card statements for hotels I'd never been to and jewelry I'd never received. I paused, letting the implications sink in. Chloe was staring at her brother with dawning horror. Robert had the decency to look ashamed, his eyes fixed on his plate. Only Isabella maintained her icy glare. And then, I continued, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, I found out about Serafina, about not just that you were sleeping with her, but that you were building a whole new life with her. You told her you were getting a divorce, didn't you? You told her I was emotionally unstable, that our marriage was just a business arrangement we couldn't get out of yet. Serafina's gasp was all the confirmation I needed. Her eyes filled with tears as she stared at Ethan, a look of profound betrayal on her face. Ethan, is that true? You told me she signed the papers months ago. She's lying, Sarah. Ethan insisted, his voice losing its authoritative edge, replaced by a desperate pleading. He was trying to hold on to his new reality, but the foundation was crumbling. Amelia is unwell. She's making all of this up to hurt me. Am I? I slid the marriage license across the polished wood of the table until it stopped directly in front of Serafina's plate. Then, what is this a-fantasy? This is a legally binding document dated 10 years ago. It proves that he and I are married. It proves that the child I am carrying is his legitimate heir. And it proves that whatever promises he made to you, whatever future he dangled in front of your face, was built on a foundation of lies. I stood up. Then the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I was the one in control now. All the power he and his family wielded, all their money and influence meant nothing in the face of this simple, irrefutable truth. The ring on your finger, I said, my voice cold and hard as steel, is not a promise. It's stolen property. He didn't buy you a new ring, Serafina. He stole mine, because he's not just a liar and a cheat. He's a coward and a thief. He didn't have the courage to build something new with you, so he tried to give you a cheap second-hand copy of my life. Isabella rose to her feet, her face a mask of fury. How dare you speak to my son like that in his own home, at his own party? Correction, Isabella. I shot back, turning to face my mother-in-law for the first time. This isn't his party. It's our anniversary dinner. A celebration of a marriage you have actively encouraged him to destroy. You knew about her, didn't you? You've probably met her for lunch, planned their future together while I was at home planning a nursery. The flicker in her eyes told me I'd hit the mark. The complicity was absolute. You are no longer welcome in this family, Amelia, she spat. You have embarrassed us for the last time. A raw, ragged laugh escaped my lips. Embarrassed you? You think this is about embarrassment? This is about a decade of deceit. And don't worry, Isabella. I have no intention of remaining in this family. In fact, my lawyer will be in touch with your son tomorrow morning to discuss the terms of our divorce. I turned to Ethan. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of rage and panic. He had lost control of the narrative, and it was killing him. And just so we're clear, Ethan, I said, leaning forward slightly, I'm not talking about an amicable split. I'm talking about half. Half of the company you built using the inheritance my father left me as seed money. Half of the portfolio we built together. Half of this perfect life you tried to steal from me and give to her. And I will get full custody of my son. You will not do to him what you have done to me. I straightened up and looked around the table one last time. At Robert's averted gaze, at Chloe's tear-streaked face, at Isabella's pure, unadulterated hatred, and at Serafina, who was now openly sobbing the stolen ring on her finger, looking garish and cheap. Finally, I looked at Ethan, the man I had loved, the man who had become a stranger. Happy anniversary, darling. I said the words, dripping with ice. Then I turned my back on all of them, on the wreckage of my marriage and the ruins of the Sterling family, and I walked out of the restaurant. I didn't run. I walked, my head held high, my hand resting protectively on the small life kicking within me. The real cornerstone of my new life. The elevator ride down from the 32nd floor was a journey through a vacuum. The opulent music of the restaurant faded, replaced by the low mechanical hum of the descending car. The reflection in the polished brass walls showed a woman I barely recognized. Her face was pale and set her eyes burning with an intensity that felt foreign. The expensive maternity dress I had bought for the occasion now felt like a costume from a play that had just ended in disaster. My body was thrumming with adrenaline, a high-frequency vibration under my skin. My hands were shaking, so I clasped them over my belly, grounding myself in the steady, rhythmic movements of my unborn son. He was real. This was real. The moment the elevator doors opened into the cavernous, marble-floored lobby, the facade I had so carefully maintained began to crumble. A sob, thick and ragged, tore its way from my throat. I stumbled towards the exit, fumbling in my purse for my phone, my fingers clumsy and uncooperative. "Amelia, wait." Ethan's voice echoed across the lobby. I didn't stop. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and into the cool night air. A valet, startled by my sudden appearance, rushed forward. "Mrs. Sterling, your car. Don't you dare walk away from me," Ethan snarled, grabbing my arm just as I reached the curb. His grip was like iron. I wrenched my arm free, spinning to face him. The frantic energy of the city street, the blare of horns, the chatter of passers-by seemed to fade into the background, a distant soundtrack to our own private war. "Don't touch me!" I seethed, my voice low and dangerous. "Don't you ever touch me again." "You have no idea what you've just done," he said, his face contorted with a rage that eclipsed any I had ever seen from him. "You humiliated me. You humiliated my family." "You humiliated me," I shot back, my voice rising. "You destroyed our marriage, our family, our future. You sat a woman wearing my stolen wedding ring at our anniversary dinner, and you have the audacity to talk to me about humiliation. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, he said, his voice dropping, trying to regain control. It was his classic move: escalate, then de-escalate and manipulate. Sarah wasn't supposed to wear the ring tonight. It was a mistake. I was going to tell you. After the baby was born, I was trying to protect you. The lie was so bald, so insulting, that it momentarily stunned me into silence. Protect me. I finally whispered the words laced with disbelief. By lying to me every single day, by planning a new life behind my back, by taking the symbol of our vows and putting it on her hand. That's your idea of protection. You haven't been happy in years, Amelia admitted. He countered, his voice rising again. We were just going through the motions. Serafina, she makes me feel alive. She understands me. She understands the version of you that you sold her, I retorted. The wealthy, successful architect, unburdened by a wife and child. Did she understand you when you were forging my signature on the loan applications for the new condo you bought for her? Did she understand you when you liquidated the stock portfolio my grandmother left me to fund her art gallery? The color drained from his face. The anger was replaced by a stark, bone-deep panic. This was the twist he hadn't seen coming. He thought my knowledge ended with his infidelity. He had no idea I had spent the last 2 months following the paper trail. How did you know that? He stammered. You're not as clever as you think you are, Ethan. You got sloppy. I said, my voice cold and clinical. You used our joint accounts. You moved money through shell corporations that weren't as anonymous as you thought. While you were busy playing the romantic hero for your mistress, I was at home with a forensic accountant, and we found everything. He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. The charming, powerful Ethan Sterling was gone. In his place was a cornered animal eyes, darting around as if seeking an escape route. Amelia, we can fix this, he pleaded, his tone shifting dramatically to one of desperate conciliation. Listen to me. We don't have to do this. Think of the baby. Think of our family. I am thinking of the baby, I said, my hand instinctively returning to my stomach. I am ensuring that my son is not raised by a thief and a fraud. You don't have a family anymore, Ethan. You have a co-conspirator in your mother and a series of financial and emotional debts you are about to have to pay. From the corner of my eye, I saw Chloe emerge from the restaurant, her face pale and tear-streaked. She hovered near the doorway, hesitating before she started walking towards us. Ethan, leave her alone, Chloe said, her voice trembling but firm. Just stop. You've done enough. Stay out of this, Chloe, Ethan snapped, not even looking at her. His focus was entirely on me, his eyes boring into mine. Amelia, please, don't throw away 10 years. I love you. I know I do. This with Sarah was a mistake, a fantasy. It was the final, pathetic lie. He didn't love me. He loved the stability I provided, the image I helped him project. He loved my money and my connections. And now that he was about to lose it all, he was trying to rewrite the entire script. The only mistake, I said slowly, was mine. For believing you were a man of integrity. For trusting you with my heart, my future, and my inheritance. I looked over at Chloe, offering her a sad, grateful smile. Thank you, Chloe. I turned my back on him then for the last time. The valet, who had been watching the entire exchange with wide-eyed fascination, seemed to snap to attention. Your car, Mrs. Sterling? He asked again, his voice now hushed and respectful. "Yes, please, Michael," I said, my voice clear and steady. "And from now on, it's Ms. Rosewood." As I slid into the cool leather of my car, I didn't look back. I didn't want the last image of my husband to be this pathetic, crumbling version. I wanted to remember the cold fury in my own heart, the weight of the truth in my hands, and the feeling of utter terrifying and exhilarating freedom as I drove away, leaving the wreckage of the House of Sterling smoking in my rear-view mirror. The tears came then hot and fast, but they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of purgation, washing away a decade of carefully constructed lies and leaving behind the hard, unshakable foundation of the woman I was about to become. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and tear-streaked asphalt. The familiar streets of our Lincoln Park neighborhood felt alien. The grand brick and limestone townhouses like monuments to a life that was no longer mine. When I pulled into the driveway of the house, my house, I corrected myself, bought and paid for with the bulk of my inheritance, I didn't immediately go inside. I just sat in the dark, the engine ticking as it cooled, and let the full weight of the night descend upon me. Inside that house were the trappings of our shared life, the photographs on the mantelpiece, the books we'd read together, the half-assembled crib in the nursery. Each object was a landmine of memory, and I knew that stepping inside would be its own kind of battle. My phone buzzed, startling me. A text from Chloe. "Are you okay?" "I am so sorry, Amelia. I had no idea about any of it. He is scum. Mom is a monster. I'm on your side. Whatever you need." A single genuine tear slid down my cheek, different from the angry, grief-stricken ones that had preceded it. In the nest of vipers that was the Sterling family, I had found one unlikely ally. I typed back a simple, "Thank you. It means more than you know." Taking a deep breath, I finally got out of the car and walked into the house. The silence was absolute, a stark contrast to the storm that had just erupted. I ignored the living room, the kitchen, the curated spaces of our public life. I went straight to my husband's office. Ethan's office was his sanctuary. It was meticulously organized, all dark wood, brushed steel, and the faint scent of expensive leather. It was the room that best represented the man I thought he was: orderly, intelligent, sophisticated. Now I saw it for what it was, a stage set. I went to his desk and turned on the green glass banker's lamp. In my purse was a small key. It didn't belong to a diary, but to the bottom right-hand drawer of his antique desk, the one he always kept locked. I'd found the spare key months ago, tucked away in an old coat pocket, and had it duplicated. At the time, I'd told myself it was for emergencies. In truth, a seed of suspicion had already been planted. The lock clicked open. Inside it was not the chaos of a secret life, but more of Ethan's obsessive order. There were files neatly labeled, but these labels weren't for architectural projects. They were names. Serafina Artistry LLC, Lakeview Condo Holdings, Sterling Future Investments. For the next 3 hours, fueled by a grim and righteous fury, I pulled his secret life apart, piece by piece. My work with the forensic accountant, Mr. Davies, had given me the roadmap. Now I was collecting the original documents. There it was, the purchase agreement for a $2 million condominium on Lakeshore Drive, purchased by a holding company I'd never heard of. The down payment I saw from a highlighted bank transfer slip, stapled to the back, had been wired directly from a brokerage account that held the stocks my grandmother had left me. an account that required dual signatures for any withdrawal over $10,000. My signature was there, a perfect, elegant forgery. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just marital infidelity. It was multiple felonies. Fraud. Forgery. Grand larceny. I found the incorporation documents for Serafina Artistry LLC. Ethan was listed as the sole director and shareholder. He hadn't just funded her gallery, he owned it. He owned her. The monthly statements showed lavish expenses, art supplies, trips to Art Basel in Miami and Venice, consulting fees that were clearly just cash infusions. He had built her a beautiful life, a creative paradise, and he had done it all with my money. My phone rang a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered, my voice wary. "Hello. Is this Amelia?" The voice was small, shaky, and instantly familiar. "Serafina?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Yes. I got your number from Chloe," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I am so sorry. I swear to you I didn't know. He told me you were divorced. He showed me papers." "Let me guess," I said, my voice flat, devoid of sympathy. "He showed you unsigned drafts his lawyer had drawn up. He told you it was just a formality, that the judges were backed up." There was a choked sob on the other end of the line. "Yes, how did you know? Because he's a predictable liar," I stated. "And you were a predictable target. Young, talented, a little naive. You believed the fairy tale." "He gave me the ring this morning," she whispered. "He said it was his grandmother's, that he'd been saving it. He said tonight was about closing a chapter with his family and starting a new public one with me. I feel so stupid, so used." A part of me, the old empathetic. Amelia felt a flicker of pity for this girl. She was a victim in her own way. But that part of me was buried under layers of betrayal and a fierce, protective maternal instinct. "You were used," I said, my tone hardening. "But your stupidity doesn't absolve you. You never once thought to look me up to question why his ex-wife was still living in his house. You chose to believe the convenient lie because the alternative didn't come with a condo on Lakeshore Drive." "That's not fair," she cried. "Fair," I scoffed. "Fair is the last thing you should be asking for right now. Did you know the gallery he bought for you was paid for with money stolen from me, from my dead grandmother?" The silence on the other end was profound. She hadn't known. Of course she hadn't. Her fairy tale didn't include criminal conduct. "I'm going to send you an address," I said, my mind working quickly. An idea was forming a new, sharper edge to my plan. "It's a lawyer's office. Be there Monday morning at 9 a.m. Bring every document Ethan ever gave you, every gift, every receipt. If you want to salvage any part of your life and career from the wreckage he's about to become, you'll be there, and you will tell them everything." "Why would I help you?" she asked, a hint of defiance in her voice. "Because right now you are an accessory to his crimes." I said, the lie tasting like power. It wasn't strictly true, but it was close enough to the truth to be effective. "You are living in an asset purchased with stolen funds. You are the beneficiary of his fraud. When this goes public, and believe me, it will go public. Do you want to be positioned as his accomplice or as another one of his victims? Your choice." I didn't wait for an answer. I hung up the phone. My eyes fell upon one last file at the bottom of the drawer. It was thinner than the others, labeled simply Oliver. My heart stopped. With trembling fingers I opened it. It wasn't filled with plans for a nursery or trust fund documents. It was correspondence with a law firm. Not his usual corporate lawyers, but a boutique firm specializing in custody battles. He had been preparing for this. He had been building a case against me for months. There were printouts of my social media notes about my emotional state, even a preliminary inquiry into hiring a private investigator to follow me. He wasn't just going to leave me. He was going to try and take my son. The rage I felt in the restaurant was a flickering candle compared to the inferno that engulfed me now. The last vestiges of my grief burned away, leaving behind something terrifyingly clear and hard. This was no longer a divorce. It was a war, and I would be damned if I was going to lose. I took out my phone and dialed the number for Mr. Davies, my 60-year-old bulldog-faced forensic accountant. "Davies," he answered, his voice gravelly. "It's Amelia Rosewood," I said. "We're escalating. I want you to meet my new lawyer and me on Monday morning, and I need you to find everything, every hidden asset, every secret account, every dollar he has ever tried to hide. I don't just want to divorce him. I want to bankrupt him. I want to utterly and completely destroy him." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then a low chuckle. "Ms. Rosewood," he said, a note of genuine admiration in his voice. "I thought you'd never ask." The weekend passed in a fugue state of methodical preparation. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Instead, I catalogued evidence, scanned documents, and built a timeline of Ethan's deceit, the dates and figures forming a damning indictment of the man I had married. The house, once a home, had become my war room. The dining table where we'd hosted countless dinner parties was now covered in bank statements and legal pads. Each forged signature I found, each illicit transfer I uncovered, chipped away another piece of the grief, replacing it with cold, hard resolve. On Sunday evening, the doorbell rang. My heart hammered against my ribs, assuming it was Ethan coming to plead or threaten. But when I looked at the security camera feed, I saw Robert Sterling, my father-in-law, standing on the porch alone. He looked smaller than he did in a boardroom or at the head of a dinner table, his shoulders slumped, his usual air of detached authority gone. Hesitantly, I opened the door. "Amelia," he said, his voice quiet. "May I come in for a moment?" I stepped aside, letting him into the foyer. He looked past me into the dining room at the sea of paperwork. His eyes, so often vacant, were filled with a weary sadness. "Chloe told me. She told me what you said. About the money. The forgeries," he began, unable to meet my gaze. I didn't want to believe it. "And do you believe it now?" I asked, my voice devoid of warmth. "I went to my office. I have access to the family's central accounts," he confessed, finally looking at me. "I saw the transfers, the liquidations. I saw what he did to your grandmother's portfolio. I am so sorry, Amelia. This is a disgrace." I remained silent, waiting. This wasn't a social call. "Isabella is beside herself," he continued, wringing his hands. "She refuses to see it. To her, the only crime committed was your public display. She's talking about hiring the best peer firms, the most aggressive lawyers. She wants to paint you as an unstable gold digger. Let her try," I said calmly. "The truth has a funny way of cutting through PR spin, especially when it's backed by federal fraud charges." Robert flinched at the words. "It's come to that. It came to that the moment he decided to forge my name and steal from me to fund his affair," I stated plainly. "What do you want, Robert?" He took a deep breath. "I want to help, not just for you, but for my grandson. The Sterling name has been a source of pride in this city for 3 generations. We've built hospitals, funded university wings. My son has tarnished that. He has brought shame upon us with his greed and his cruelty. I will not stand by and let Isabella's pride destroy what's left of our family's integrity." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. "These are from my personal files. Records of every financial gift the family has given Ethan since your wedding. Documentation of his initial business loans, which, contrary to what he may have told you, were contingent upon his marriage to you and the access it gave him to your family's network. It proves that his entire career was built on your foundation. It might help your lawyers." I took the envelope, stunned. It was a defection, a quiet seismic shift in the family alliance. "Why?" I asked, the single word encompassing a dozen questions. Why now? Why not before? Why betray your own son? "Because my son is a 35-year-old man who is about to have a child of his own." Robert said, his voice heavy with regret. And somewhere along the way, I failed him. I let his mother indulge his every whim. I let his ambition curdle into arrogance. Maybe this is the only way for him to finally learn that actions have consequences. And because my grandson deserves to have a mother who is solvent, secure, and free from the poison of this family. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Be careful, Amelia. Ethan is my son. I know what he's capable of when he's cornered. He won't go down without a fight." Monday morning arrived grey and drizzling, a fitting backdrop for the day's business. I met my new lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Jessica Albright, at a coffee shop before our meeting. I had hired her on the recommendation of a friend who had described her as a velvet-gloved shark. As we walked into the sleek downtown offices of her firm, the first person I saw sitting in the waiting area was Serafina. She looked pale and frightened, clutching a large portfolio case to her chest. She stood when she saw me, her eyes red-rimmed. She didn't offer an apology, just a nervous, "I brought everything." "Good," I said, offering nothing more. We were shown into a large conference room overlooking the rain-slicked city. Mr. Davies was already there, along with two of Jessica's junior associates. The table was vast, but the amount of evidence we had collected covered nearly every inch of its polished surface. Robert's envelope was there, as was Serafina's portfolio. Jessica Albright ran the meeting with terrifying efficiency. She listened intently as I laid out the timeline, as Mr. Davies explained the intricate web of financial fraud, and as a tearful Serafina detailed the lies Ethan had told her, producing text messages and emails that corroborated her story. She handed over the ring, which Jessica placed in a small labeled evidence bag with a pair of tongs as if it were radioactive. "He told me he was flying to Reno next month to establish residency," Serafina said, her voice barely a whisper. "He said he would file for a quick divorce there, that you had agreed to it." "A fraudulent divorce to cap off the fraudulent life," Jessica mused, making a note. Classic narcissist playbook. After 3 hours, Jessica leaned back in her chair. "Okay," she said. "Here's the situation. We have him on bank fraud, wire fraud, and forgery. The sheer volume of evidence is overwhelming. Serafina's testimony makes her a cooperating witness, not a target. Ms. Rosewood, you are in an incredibly strong position." "So what's the plan?" I asked. "We have 2 paths," Jessica explained. "Path A, we go nuclear. We file for divorce, and I make a call to a friend at the U.S. Attorney's Office. The feds will freeze his assets, and he'll be facing a criminal indictment within the week. He'll likely serve time. It's messy, it's public, and the sterling name gets dragged through the mud." She paused, letting that sink in. Path B is what I call a controlled demolition. We use the threat of Path A to get exactly what we want. We draft an airtight post-marital settlement that gives you everything you're entitled to and more. We arrange a private off-the-books confrontation. No courts, no press, just us, them, and the evidence. What do you recommend? I asked. Path B, Jessica said without hesitation. It's faster, it's cleaner, and it gives you complete control. A criminal trial can be unpredictable and drag on for years. This way, we cut the cancer out with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. We get you your freedom, your financial security, and full undisputed custody of your son. We let him keep his liberty, but we take everything else. We leave him an empty shell which for a man like Ethan is a punishment far worse than prison. I thought of my son. I didn't want his first years to be marked by his father's public trial and incarceration. I didn't want his name associated with that kind of scandal. My father-in-law's words echoed in my mind. This was about securing my son's future free from the sterling poison. Path B, I said, my voice firm. Let's schedule the demolition. We didn't give them time to prepare. Jessica's office sent a single terse email to Ethan's lawyer and to Robert Sterling at 4 p.m. on Tuesday. It stated simply, a meeting to discuss an urgent and time-sensitive resolution to the dissolution of the Sterling marriage will take place at the offices of Albright and Associates tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Attendance by Ethan Isabella and Robert Sterling is mandatory. Failure to appear will result in immediate legal and criminal proceedings. No further correspondence will be entered into. The venue was the same conference room where we had planned our attack, but the atmosphere was entirely different. The mountain of evidence was gone, replaced by a single, thick, leather-bound folder in front of Jessica and a glass of water for me. I was flanked by Jessica and Mr. Davies. We were a united, silent front. The Sterlings arrived at precisely 10 a.m. Ethan came in first, his face a mask of defiant arrogance, though the dark circles under his eyes betrayed sleepless nights. He was followed by Isabella, who looked at me with pure, undisguised venom, her body rigid with indignation. Robert brought up the rear, his expression one of grim resignation. He gave me a brief, almost imperceptible nod. They sat opposite us, a fractured dynasty preparing for its final stand. Their lawyer, a slick corporate man named Harrison Crane, began to speak, but Jessica held up a hand, silencing him instantly. "Thank you all for coming." Jessica began, her voice cool and pleasant, the sound of a surgeon before the first incision. "We are here today to avoid a public spectacle that would be ruinously damaging to everyone, but most especially to the Sterling family name and business. So before we begin, let's be perfectly clear about what is on the table." She opened her folder. "Over the past 2 years, your son, Mr. Ethan Sterling, has systematically defrauded his wife, my client, of approximately $4.7 million. Ethan scoffed. "That's an outrageous and baseless accusation." "It is a meticulously documented fact." Mr. Davies interjected, his gravelly voice cutting through Ethan's denial. "We have traced the liquidation of the Rosewood portfolio, the forged signatures on 7 separate financial instruments, and the subsequent funneling of those funds through 3 shell corporations into assets and accounts controlled solely by you." The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois would likely call it a slam-dunk case of wire and bank fraud carrying a penalty of up to 30 years in federal prison. The color drained from Isabella's face. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. "Furthermore," Jessica continued, "we have a signed, notarized affidavit from Ms. Serafina Collins, along with emails, texts, and financial records, detailing your fraudulent promise of marriage, your intention to commit bigamy, and your plan to file for a fraudulent divorce in another state. While less of a prison time issue, the press would have an absolute field day with it. Sterling Scion's stolen ring and secret life. I can see the headlines now. Isabella let out a strangled gasp. This is blackmail. No, Mrs. Sterling, Jessica corrected her calmly. Blackmail is the threat of exposing a secret. I am merely stating the consequences of the crimes your son has already committed. This is a settlement negotiation. Jessica slid a document across the table. It was thick, bound in blue. This is a post-marital asset and custody agreement. It is non-negotiable. You will not contest it. You will not amend it. You will sign it today. Here are the terms. She stood up and began to pace slowly behind her chair as she spoke. 1 Amelia receives the townhouse free and clear. The mortgage will be paid in full from the Sterling Family Trust within 30 days. 2. The entirety of the stolen $4.7 million will be returned to a trust established for Amelia and her son Oliver, also from the family trust. This is not alimony. It is restitution. 3. Ethan will permanently relinquish all parental rights to Oliver. He will have no claim to custody or visitation now or ever. His name will not be on the birth certificate. My client believes that a man of your son's moral character would be a detrimental influence. The Sterling name in this instance is a liability, not an asset. 4. Ethan will divest his shares in Sterling Architecture. They will be transferred to his father, his sister, or whomever. But he will be scrubbed from the company he built with my client's money. And 5. Jessica stopped pacing and leaned her hands on the table, looking directly at Ethan. You will all sign a comprehensive non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. You will never speak of Amelia or her son publicly or privately again. Any violation and the entire dossier of your financial crimes, she tapped the folder in front of her, goes directly to the authorities and the Chicago Tribune. Are there any questions? The silence in the room was absolute. Ethan looked as if he'd been physically struck. His bravado shattered, leaving only a hollowed-out shell. Isabella was staring at the agreement as if it were a venomous snake. You can't take my son, Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. You can't take my son. I spoke for the first time, my voice clear and cold, cutting through his pathetic plea. You tried to take him from me first, Ethan. You had lawyers investigating me, building a case to paint me as an unfit mother, all while you were robbing me blind. You don't get to claim fatherhood now that it's inconvenient to lose. You gave up that right when you chose to build your life on lies. Isabella turned on me, her eyes blazing with a mother's fury. You will not do this. You will not take my grandson and erase my son. Your son erased himself, I countered, standing to face her. He erased a decade of marriage. He erased my trust. He erased his own integrity. This isn't me taking anything. This is a reckoning. These are the consequences of his choices. Choices you enabled every step of the way. Robert Sterling finally spoke. He picked up the pen that lay in the center of the table. Sign it, Ethan. Sign it, Isabella. Robert, Isabella shrieked. Have you lost your mind? No, he said, his voice filled with a profound, weary authority she could not defy. I have found it. It is over. We will sign the papers, we will pay the price, and we will try to salvage what little honor we have left. This is not a negotiation. This is the end of the line. With a shaking hand, Ethan took the pen from his father. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. He signed his name, the frantic scrawl a pathetic imation of his once confident signature. Then, with a look of utter defeat, Isabella signed. Finally, Robert added his own name, sealing the pact. It was done. I stood there for a moment, looking at the ruins of the family that had almost consumed me. I felt no triumph, no joy, just a vast, quiet emptiness where a decade of my life used to be. But it was a clean emptiness, a space to build something new. I turned and walked out of the room without a backward glance. I didn't need to see their faces anymore. I walked out of the building and into the bright, clear light of the day. The rain had stopped. I placed a hand on my belly, feeling the strong, steady kick of my son. My Oliver. My beginning. My future. The House of Sterling had crumbled, but my foundation was stronger than ever. And just like that, it was over. Walking away from that building wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the demolition of a life built on lies and the first step onto solid ground that I owned. The story of Ethan and the stolen ring became a silent, settled affair, a ghost haunting the ruins of the once proud Sterling family. I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy boy named Oliver Rosewood, and the only legacy he carries is one of strength and truth. The road ahead wasn't easy, but for the first time in a decade, it was mine to pave. This story is a reminder that sometimes the deepest betrayals can lead to our greatest liberation. If you've ever felt trapped, underestimated, or had your truth denied, know that your strength is more powerful than you can imagine. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and reclaiming your power. What was the biggest twist for you? Let me know in the comments below.